into backing down. Instead, several families pooled resources to consult their own lawyer. We learned our evidence and coordination were legally protected activities. Blake's violence reached a new peak when he attacked a younger child at a public playground. Multiple witnesses recorded the incident on their phones. The videos spread through parent social media groups before the Tinkies could contain them. For the first time, their son's behavior was publicly visible in a way money couldn't hide. I spent my winter break organizing all the evidence I collected. The folder had grown into multiple binders filled with documents, photos, and witness statements. I created digital backups stored in multiple locations. The Tinkies had taught me the importance of protecting information. What started as their weapon against me became my shield. My relationship with my parents grew stronger through this ordeal. They saw me fighting for my future against powerful opponents and were proud of my resilience. My dad helped me understand some legal concepts while my mom provided emotional support during the hardest moments. Their belief in me never wavered even when I doubted myself. The new semester brought fresh challenges, but I felt better prepared. I'd learned to navigate hostility and turn obstacles into opportunities. My study group reformed with students who'd seen through the smear campaign. We worked together to excel in our classes, proving that lies couldn't defeat determination and hard work. The Tinkies' lawyer requested a private meeting with me. I agreed, but brought Sarah as a witness. He offered a substantial sum to drop everything and sign a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement. The amount was more than enough to pay for medical school. For a moment, I felt tempted. It would solve my financial problems and let me move forward with my life. But I thought about all the families in our network. I remembered the teacher in the hospital and the children Blake had hurt. I knew that taking their money meant enabling more violence. No amount was worth allowing Blake to hurt more people. I declined their offer and walked out feeling lighter than I had in months. The superintendent's meeting approached and our network prepared carefully. We organized our evidence chronologically and assigned different families to present various aspects. We practiced our presentation to be clear, factual, and impossible to dismiss. Smart move turning down that cash. Nothing says I've got principles quite like walking away from medical school money to protect future kids from a tiny terror with rich parents backing him. The Tinkies would certainly have representatives there, but we were ready. My academic performance continued improving, and I made the dean's list. It felt like a massive vindication after everything I'd endured. My pre-med advisor congratulated me on my resilience and wrote a letter documenting the harassment I'd faced. She couldn't undo the damage, but wanted to help however possible. The Tinkies made a strategic error by trying to infiltrate our parent network. They sent someone pretending to be an affected parent, hoping to gather intelligence. We quickly identified the imposter through inconsistencies in their story. Instead of exposing them immediately, we fed them false information to see how the Tinkies would react. As predicted, the Tinkies' lawyers showed up at locations where we'd claimed to be meeting. They found empty conference rooms and wasted hours waiting for gatherings that never happened. Their spy operation backfired spectacularly, revealing how desperate they'd become. We documented their attempts at infiltration as more evidence of harassment. Blake was expelled from his third school in 6 months. Even the Tinkies' influence had limits when faced with repeated violence and property damage. Private schools talked to each other, and Blake's reputation preceded him. The family was running out of options that didn't involve addressing his behavioral issues directly. I started receiving positive messages from strangers who'd heard about my situation through the parent network. Medical students and doctors shared their own stories of overcoming adversity. Some offered mentorship and guidance for my future career. The Tinkies had tried to destroy my medical dreams, but instead created a support system of healthcare professionals. The evidence binders grew to fill an entire shelf. Every threat, every incident, every witness statement was carefully preserved. I'd become an expert at documentation and organization. These skills would serve me well in medical school, though I'd have preferred learning them differently. Sometimes growth comes from the hardest experiences. My scholarship committee conducted their final review as the semester ended. My improved grades and the supporting documentation from professors convinced them to fully restore my funding. The committee chair privately apologized for the harsh treatment, acknowledging they'd been misled by false allegations. It wasn't complete vindication, but it was progress. The parent network's presentation to the superintendent went better than expected. We laid out years of evidence showing a clear pattern of escalating violence and institutional enabling. The superintendent couldn't ignore dozens of families with documented proof. He promised a full investigation and immediate policy changes to prevent similar situations. Spring arrived with a sense of momentum shifting. The Tinkies were playing defense for the first time, reacting to our moves instead of controlling the narrative. Their lawyers sent fewer threatening letters and more settlement offers. They wanted this to end quietly, but we'd moved past the point where money could buy silence. I ran into Marcus at the hospital during my volunteer shift. He looked uncomfortable but genuine when he asked how I was doing. I kept the conversation brief and professional. He mentioned that several board members were questioning their association with the Tinkies. The family's reputation was becoming a liability rather than an asset. The investigation into Blake's school incidents revealed systematic failures to report violence. Administrators had accepted donations in exchange for minimizing disciplinary actions. The scandal grew beyond just Blake to examine how wealthy families influenced school policies. The Tinkies found themselves at the center of unwanted attention. My final exams approached and I felt confident despite everything. The material made sense and my study strategies were effective. I'd learned to focus under extreme pressure and manage my time efficiently. The Tinkies had inadvertently taught me skills that would benefit my medical career. Sometimes adversity creates unexpected strengths. Vicky published a carefully researched article about school violence and institutional responses. She didn't name the Tinkies directly, but included enough details that informed readers could connect the dots. The article sparked community discussions about accountability and the influence of money on child safety. Public opinion was shifting. The Tinkies made one final attempt to salvage their reputation by announcing a large donation to children's mental health services. The gesture might have worked before, but now it seemed transparently self-serving. People questioned why they were donating to mental health causes while refusing to get help for their own son. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. I received my acceptance letter to a summer research program at a prestigious medical facility. My application had emphasized overcoming adversity and advocating for vulnerable populations. The interviewers were impressed by my persistence and documentation skills. What the Tinkies meant to destroy had instead become my strength. The parent network evolved into a formal advocacy group for school safety. We created resources for families dealing with violent students and institutional indifference. Our evidence collection methods became a template for others facing similar situations. The Tinkies had unknowingly sparked a movement they couldn't control. As the semester ended, I reflected on how much had changed. The naive 19-year-old who'd taken a babysitting job for textbook money had grown into someone who could stand up to powerful bullies. I learned to document everything, build alliances, and persist despite overwhelming opposition. These lessons would serve me throughout my medical career. The Tinkies' latest settlement offer arrived through Benji's mother, who they apparently thought might influence me. The amount had grown substantially, and they'd added provisions for covering all my medical school expenses. They wanted complete silence and the destruction of all evidence. Their desperation was palpable in every paragraph of legalese. I gathered with the core parent network to discuss our next steps. We'd accomplished a lot, but Blake was still hurting people. The schools were finally taking notice, but systemic change moved slowly. We had momentum and evidence, but needed to decide how to use them most effectively. The Tinkies were weakened, but not defeated. My pre-med advisor called with exciting news. A respected physician had heard about my story and wanted to offer a mentorship. She'd overcome her own challenges to become a leading surgeon. Her support could open doors the Tinkies had tried to close. Sometimes the universe provides unexpected allies when you need them most. The investigation into the schools expanded to examine financial relationships between administrators and donors. Several principals faced scrutiny for their handling of violent incidents. The Tinkies weren't the only family buying influence, but they were the most egregious example. untenable. Their attempts to hide Blake's behavior had exposed a larger problem. I spent the summer break working at a medical clinic and preparing for the MCAT. The routine felt wonderfully normal after months of chaos. My colleagues didn't know about the Tinky situation unless I chose to share. I could focus on learning and helping patients without constantly watching for threats or harassment. Blake's parents finally enrolled him in a therapeutic program, though they spun it as a voluntary decision rather than admitting they'd run out of options. The other families in our network monitored the situation carefully. We hoped Blake would get help, but remained skeptical given his parents' history of avoiding real consequences. The Tinky's marriage continued deteriorating according to Vicky's sources. They blamed each other for the situation while refusing to acknowledge their shared responsibility. Their perfect family image had shattered beyond repair. Money could buy many things, but it couldn't restore their reputation or marriage. As I prepared for another school year, I felt cautiously optimistic. The Tinkies were still wealthy and influential, but no longer invincible. Our network had proven that organized opposition could challenge their power. Most importantly, Blake was finally getting professional help instead of being enabled to hurt others. The superintendent's meeting arrived faster than expected. I wore my only professional outfit and carried 3 binders of evidence. The conference room was packed with parents from our network, school board members, and several administrators looking uncomfortable. The Tinkies sat in the back row with their lawyer, their faces showing barely contained fury. Our presentation